If I was to summarize the entire Zoroastrian tradition for you in just 3 or 4 or 5 words, it would be this. Everything out there that's supposed to refine the human being, both on a physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual levels, they're reduced to basically 3 teachings: right thinking, right speaking, and right acting or behaving. Now, and it has to be in that particular order. You can't act if you don't think well. However way you act, it's going to just come out wrong. And you can't speak if you don't think well, because, well, you're just incoherent. You haven't used your common sense, you haven't used your rationality, you haven't digested experiences well. So right thinking is paramount. Now, how the hell do you think the right way about anything? If there is anything about Socrates that needs to be known, is that this is a guy who just came and realized that people just don't think right about anything. About love, about relationships, about education, about life, about themselves. Nothing about them is right. So I'm not going to tell them abortion is bad or abortion is good. I'm just going to tell them, listen, let's sit and talk about sex a little bit. Now, I don't care about your biases, and should you throw me your biases, I'm going to push back. I'm going to force you to think relatively healthily about this stuff. Sex has to do with human biology. If sex was a rational thing, well, damn. The human race would have been gone long time ago. It's instinctual, it's powerful. And you come to realize, well, this is a man who goes around town for like 40, 50, 60 years, telling stories, talking to people about how to think well about this stuff. People don't like it. Sure, he has followers, but the only one who stuck around was really 1 or 2. And even in the end, when Socrates is about to die, his disciples begin to cry. He says, are you guys kidding? You've been walking side by side with me for the past like 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and I've been telling you that my flesh is a prison, that once I die, I will go back to my maker. Why the hell are you guys crying? Like Rumi, what he says, when I die, come to my grave with drums, with spiritual wine, celebrate, I am free. آدمی در عالم خاکی نمی آید به دست، آدمی دیگر بباید ساخت وزن عالمی. That if you want to create a different human being, you have to destroy the world that has created them. And in essence, you have to destroy them. So right thinking is the first step. And since today, there are really no teachers to be found, and you should always doubt the moment anyone says, come follow me, your best bet is to just consume a lot of books, varied books. Those who are atheists, those who are not so atheists, those who are profoundly religious, philosophy, anthropology. Just be a rich thinker on the inside. And the problem with being rich on the inside, hopefully by then you will be able to kind of manage the conflicts that ideas will bring about. Now, when you have created a rich library on your inside, and you can think well, that when something happens out there, instead of just passing a judgment very, very quickly, you sit back and you say, okay, let me see what's happening here. It's kind of like what people say about Donald Trump, that, his father was never caring. Or what they say about Adolf Hitler, that he was an artist, but he was spanked at every time, every corner, when his parents didn't like what he was doing, And so he had a lot of aggression on the inside, no different than Trump. And the only tragedy is they just kind of express their repression in such an awful way. Now, when you become rich and pregnant with emotions on the inside, because that's what ideas do, ideas create a good amount of emotions, you need to be able to express your emotions. Now, Zoroaster didn't talk about expressing your thoughts through painting, through sculpting, through gardening. He was mainly talking about the spoken word. For those of you who know this philosopher named Wittgenstein, he was suicidal, he was depressed. If it wasn't for Bertrand Russell, he would have probably just ended his life very, very early on. We are really held hostage, according to Wittgenstein. We are held hostage by language. I want to tell you something. I want to respond to your question adequately. And I want to feel your question. And to some extent, maybe I even do. And I want to use words to convey what I feel and the depth of my feelings and thoughts in response to your question. And as you have no doubt noticed, I am fumbling left and right. I go from Wittgenstein to this, to that. I'm all over the place. And it's because I'm held hostage. I don't really know how to convey. And it's because I don't really know how to think well. I haven't been engaged in thinking as a healthy exercise for most of my life. I come to class, you ask me a question, and I sincerely want to respond to your question. I just don't know how. So I go from one story to another. I go from one philosophy of life to another. And in the end, you walk away saying, you know, he said a lot of things. I'm just not sure what exactly he said. And so the spoken word, using it in the proper way. I mean, if you know the history of how words and language came about, I mean, look at a child, an infant, your son, you're a father, and you're a mother. And so, you know, they come out of the womb and they cry, and they grunt, and they groan. And it takes you a while to figure out what the hell are they asking for. And then all of a sudden this magic happens where they say water. Something that took them all this, like hours. Lots of crying and screaming, and you as a parent had to figure out, it's like Rubik cubes, you know, what the hell is she talking about? And then water is a shortcut. Within like a second, you know exactly what this kid wants. And then the written language. The problem with the written language is that every single one of us in this classroom come from a different culture, different background. You know, you smoke, but your smoking is from a different culture. You smoke because you're bored. You smoke because you're depressed. You smoke because you're lonely. You smoke because you hate your life and you hate your parents and you hate God. A Native American smokes because it's their time to grow into a different stage. They love everything about their life. So the culture is different. The problem with the written language is every single one now looks at what they read through the prism, through this narrow window that they occupy. And now everybody walks away with a different perspective and different philosophy of life. That's why it's always important to kind of have a living, quacking teacher. So every time you have a question, you ask, and the teacher says, no, this is a wrong question, you're not there yet, and even if you are, you don't really understand it. So just be patient, shut your mouth. You need someone to fight back against the illusions that most of us have, myself included. So once you begin to think well, you have to come to a place where you say, okay, feelings and thoughts, how do I express them? And man, now you got to go through many years of trying to figure out what exactly it is you're thinking and what exactly it is you're feeling and how exactly can you express it in a way that people can understand. You know, it's something you'll find in the movie Philadelphia, that this lawyer uses all this flowery, big word language, and prosecutor defense says, speak to me as if I was a 2-year-old. And all human beings, every single one of us in this classroom, regardless of our age, we are too. We need simple language to understand things, complicated things. I always find it interesting. I don't know if you guys have watched Noam Chomsky recently. He's this like 128-year-old guy. And now and he doesn't have the time or the energy, maybe his body is far too weak and feeble to go to actually physical locations to give talks or to have debates. So a couple of weeks ago I was sitting and he just happened to be, you know, there. And so I clicked. And Noam Chomsky was interviewing or debating this 22-year-old Israeli kid, 22 years old, talking, having a debate with a guy who is like 20 times his age, who spent his life, not in emotions, but actually reading and observing and thinking. And you say, well, this is a kid, you know, and like all kids, you know, they create some accounts, they get subscribers, people follow them, all of a sudden they have, as a 20-year-old, a big name, and now they can actually sit with the Pope and have a conversation about what Catholicism is. And so what you have in the second aspect of Zoroastrian teaching is you have to spend a lot of time to kind of perfect your linguistic ability. So first thinking, think well, don't talk, just think. But to think, you have to make sure your biases and judgments don't interfere to contaminate what you want to think about. Keep your history away. Keep your biases away. Above all, keep your goddamn emotions away. No one cares about how you feel about anything. Shut your mouth, sit back, just open your ears. And if you object to anything, keep it to yourself. No one cares. Once you have perfected the craft of thinking, go on this quest to perfect your expression. And if any of you in this class are lovers of the Christian tradition, and by that I only mean the stories given to us by Jesus only in the Gospels, you have a man who says, the only way to perfect expression, tell stories. There isn't much else I can do. You want the truth? I can't give it to you, I'll just tell you a story. Even when you perfect your thinking, even you perfect your language, you realize you're paralyzed. You can't really tell people exactly how you think about things or how you feel about things. It doesn't work. The last stage, which is, I think, it's such a difficult place to be, is for the first time you have entered a different stage in life. You no longer want to just think, be on the sideline and just look at something and just take notes like a journalist And it's something that Albert Camus has this book called The Plague, beautiful book. And it's basically about that. It's about, there are some people who simply are like journalists. They go to certain places, it's falling apart, people are dying left and right, it's devastated. And they write and they send it through a telegram, and then it's published the next day. That's what they do. And even though they want to cry, they want to scream, it's against their profession. And there's a doctor in the novel who has gone to school for many, many years, and doctors have this illusion that they can play God, they can fix anything about the physical aspect of the human being. And what happens in the book, in both cases, at a certain point the journalist says, I'm so tired of standing far away from life and just taking notes. I want to go in there, I want to get dirty, I want to get beaten up, I want to see what life is like from the inside. I'm tired of reading about Gurdjieff. I want to go out there and find the goddamn Gurdjieff. I want to get beaten up by a good teacher. And then there is a doctor. And at last, after having gone through many years of schooling, after having, I think, bringing back a lot of health to people, he comes to realize this is a disease, a virus, a plague that I just don't have the proficiency to cure. And he throws down all of his instruments and he says, in the presence of death, I can't do anything. And what you have in both cases, both people growing kind of disgusted by who they are, what they have been most of their lives, and they want to get dirty, they want to wrestle with life. And you find yourself in this moment of paralysis, and it's a long moment. Now you want to bring your thinking and emotions into action. Let's say, I really want to make philosophy come to life for you. I know how inspiration works, man. I know how messy and complicated life is. I know the politics involving life, but I also know the importance of philosophy. I know how valuable it is. And it really is, for the most part, it is the kingdom of God. Socrates is the Jesus Christ of philosophy. And if you want to follow Socrates, you got to sell everything you got. But when you look at us, what is it that we have? Well, she is a Christian. He's a student. You're married with 20 kids. He's got money. He has a life purpose. But all these people, if they want to follow Socrates, they got to sell everything they have. And then you sit back and say, okay, well, at least thank God that he is married, or she's got money, or she's got a church to go to. At least there's a place that they can go to once life falls apart. They know how to pray, there's a companion, there's a resting place. If they follow Socrates, where is Socrates going to take them? Nowhere. The only thing that Socrates has to offer you is the time you spend with him or her. There is nothing else. The real kingdom of God is the Socrates that lives inside you. That's what he did to Plato. And Plato, we know him to be profoundly rich even in 2023 because he wrote the dialogues in the Republic. They last longer than money. Think well first, then be able to speak your ideas well. Once you grow tired of thinking in solitude or maybe in a crowd, once you grow tired of just talking to people who just don't understand anything, or maybe do understand, maybe you can form a community and put your money together and go to Costco, buy ingredients, make sandwiches, and pass them out every Saturday and Sunday. Berkeley, Oakland. You don't have to change the entire world. That's not going to happen in your lifetime. And you realize even the desire to make sandwiches and give them out to people, that requires a good amount of sacrifice, money-wise, time-wise, friend-wise, a lot of things. And even when you do pass out sandwiches to people who are needy, you'll come to realize many of them will never thank you, will look at you with a great amount of suspicion if you have poisoned the sandwich. And now you have to make sure that as you give the sandwich away and the person looks at you and says, well, give me another one. You realize you want to come out and say, you know what, the sandwich I gave you, give it back to me.